But this was on the heels. I put you up here with Dannen because last week, like I thought that was a fantastic interview, and you've been around some really good ads, in particular one down there in Norman. Do you see any similarities in terms of their vision or their ability to kind of like pivot and stay in the game where you're like, I think Nebraska's in pretty good hands?
No, I think they've been really different, but I do have a lot of confidence in Troy Dannen. It's fascinating too. I mean, he's open for me asking a lot of the questions. Like they'll give you some, Keith Man, I'll give you some things that, hey, Troy wants to hit on some of this, but I'll throw him some curveballs that, just going off of something that he said in one of the questions and hit a little bit more. And he's always open to answering that. It's also fascinating picking his brain, like in commercial breaks or before it begins. He's just got such a good pulse. I mean, if it doesn't come across when you hear him do those interviews, hearing him talk outside of that, I mean, he's in the right rooms and he's talking to the right people and he just understands thinking forward instead of, okay, well, this is not the way we want it to go. Well, it's going this way. So how can we best position Nebraska to be ready and be in the right places for that? So, I think I have a lot of confidence in that and just, again, the vision that he sees for what needs to happen. And it's really cool to sit there and talk with him even off the air and hear him answer some of the questions that look, there's a lot of questions right now and where college sports are and where they're going. And I mean, I tell him this, I feel like every time I talk to him, but I'm glad it's you and not me because I don't know how he keeps up with it. But, I know he's got a lot of good people, a lot of places that help him navigate it. But he's, I got a lot of faith and confidence in Nebraska moving forward in this ever-changing landscape of college sports.
Do you think Troy Dannen kind of sneaks up on some people sometimes in terms of his leadership ability because he comes off pretty unassuming, almost I used the term folksy the other day, like he just seems so good-natured, but as you said, it seems like he has a really good pulse on the state of college athletics and where Nebraska needs to be positioned. It kind of feels like he sneaks up on you a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, some ladies might get a little micromanagey in terms of how they want to handle coaches and how their thought process on how programs should be navigated. And I think he's pretty good about, he said it since he got here, how much he believes and how good the coaching staff is, from Mark Manning in wrestling, Rhonda Revelle in softball, just from top to bottom. The staff of coaches that he works with here. And so I think he is really good about more so how can I help and what do you need me to do to help you get to where you need to be, as opposed to trying to give his input all the time. And I think there's a big difference in that in leaders and ADs now in age. I think there are some ADs that get in the room and say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Well, a lot of the ADs aren't there in the day-to-day battles and aren't on the recruiting trails and they might know about it, but they're not in it, And so I think he just does such a great job of not micromanaging, but making sure he's involved in what can we do to get better. And, I love what he had said about how he sees all the mentions on social media about fire this person. Well, I mean, I think he's got a pretty good pulse on that as well, on where he, having these conversations. He has constant conversations with these coaches. And if he believes they've got a good plan moving forward, then it doesn't necessarily, I think he weighs in that they're working on to improve in the future, the plans in place to build off of if it's not a year that you necessarily wanted or hoped or maybe underachieved a little bit. Okay, well, what's your plan moving forward? I think he can look at that as much as he does, the immediate results and be able to be successful moving forward or not.
Hey, we were having a conversation a few minutes ago with Bruns from 24/7, and I know you can amazingly get into the weeds with players and personnel just because of your relationship with those guys. So I won't put you on the spot, but was I close? Ravi says 10. I said 7. How many guys do you feel good about that could play along that notorious position called the offensive line?
I think because you're talking about some players have unfortunately not been able to stay healthy. So I think 7 is a good number, especially maybe right now. My only thing is, what's the depth at tackle? I think you've got the depth at guard and center, but where's the depth at tackle? And so yes, you have 7 players, but you might only
Jess,
have
glad I
two
thought of that, Jess. Thank you. Glad I thought of that. Wait, I didn't.
What?
You took it one step further than I did. I didn't really think about the tackle spot like that.
Well, I think, yes, you've got 7 guys that you maybe feel good about, but you might only have 2 tackles, which is a little concerning because we've seen every single year that you have to have a backup tackle.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 backup tackles. So I think that's maybe where the depth, I think they feel really good about where that depth is building. I think maybe you still need a couple more bodies at the tackle spot to feel really good about the depth.
You know who I forget about sometimes, especially now that he's healthy, but I do remember him being kind of like on the player panel, and he loves Nebraska, even though he hasn't been here that long. I forget about Canucks sometimes, and it's good to see him kind of back healthy-ish.
Well, and I think that's where we might have depth at tackle. I don't know if we've seen it just yet. Because those guys have been so young and green. I've said this multiple times over the last few months, but I remember talking with Coach Raiola. It was towards the end of the season last year on the coaches show, and you could tell he was really, really pumped about that young group, that it just takes time to develop those young offensive linemen. They don't come in ready to play most of the time. And so I think some of those guys are starting to really starting to peak, starting to get stronger, bigger, where they can actually make a difference, make an impact on that offensive line, especially in the Big Ten. And then I heard, Dana Holgorsen say at the bowl game how unsolicited he brought up Coach Raiola and the young group of offensive linemen that he saw specifically during those bowl practices really come along. So I think you've got some young guys. I just don't think we necessarily have not seen it as much yet because we haven't seen it in games yet, but those guys get to see it in practice all the time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of those young guys that you in signing day a couple years ago, you're like, okay, where are they going to be? I think we're starting to maybe get to that point now where we're going to start seeing those guys emerge and actually compete for some of that playing time.
Jess, is there a position group that you're just the most intrigued by?
I
know who some of your favorites are.
Well,
you're a little biased with the running backs, but maybe they don't intrigue you.
Well, no, I've always loved the defensive line group, and I was was a big fan of Coach Knighton, but I am a big fan of Coach Braden. They might just step right in and carry on. I mean, just reload, right? I'm really big fan of that group. Riley Van Poppel's awesome. Cam Linhart, just that overall group. That even though there's some of those guys are leaving and have left, they're reloading with some guys that have been around and have been able to get to know a little bit, and you love their personalities, love chatting with them. So I'm still a big fan of the defensive line, and Coach Braden's awesome. He's still going to be fun to listen into. There's no doubt about it. I've said it all for the last couple of years. My favorite group to listen into on the sideline was the defensive line. I think that would probably be up there. I also think Coach Schwartz in the wide receiver room is going to be fun to listen into, hearing him chat with his guys. I probably will say, I heard you guys talking earlier about some of the position groups. I'm excited to see the wide receivers. I think they've got some guys in there that are actually going to be with Coach Holgorsen and this offense. People want to say it's the air raid. It's not the air raid, but there's no doubt he's going to throw the football, especially with Dylan. So I can't wait to see how that shakes out, who's going to emerge as being with Coach Holgorsen, as we've seen with his offenses from everywhere he's been. A lot of times there's 3 wide receivers that have rack up a lot of stats. So I am intrigued to see which maybe 3 guys really emerge and carry the load. But I think they've got a lot of them in there and a lot of talent that they have to work with.
I guess I'm relieved to hear you talk about Terry like that, because I think if you remember, you and I kind of learned at the same time about Coach Knighton, and we went from joy to tears to what are we going to do? And it's real time because we're having a show. And I know like a lot of your good stuff comes from when you're in those big groups with the O line and the D line. So I know that I could at least kind of still be somewhat good at my job if you're invested in the D line still, where I can get some tidbits. He does love to teach, and I know you probably love that.
Yeah, he just is so joyful. I don't know. It's like he's so happy, and you could tell he's really happy to be here. And uh, I ran into him the other day at after practice, and he's just I don't know. He's a light, and so that's it. When I talked to Ty Robinson at Pro Day, he said that he goes. He's got a lot of personalities, but I think he's going to be equipped to handle them in that room. It's a fun room, and I think that's what Coach Knighton did so well is he let them be them, and he heard that over and over again with those guys. He let them be them. There's a bunch of different guys from a different walks of life, and they play differently, but what the beautiful thing is getting them to come together despite their differences. And I think Coach Braden is along those same lines. He gets to know them, and he wants them to be them, and he wants them to again, just the what I've talked to him and a little bit of that I've seen, think he's going to be along those same lines of getting the best out of his players. And you can tell he's for a guy coming from the NFL to get here, there's no denying it was absolutely genuine how excited he is about the group that he's getting to work with and getting to know. And he's really excited about the opportunity to get back into college and work with some of these guys. So I think it's going to be a fun group to listen in on. And I think Coach Butler's going to be one that's Coach White didn't always come and talk to the position groups as much. Just kind of maybe if things were not going as well, or he was not as involved. I think Coach Butler will be more so probably, and I could hear him. His voice carries. So some of those guys I can't always hear, but I could hear Coach Butler. So I'll be able to listen in on some of the input that he has. I think he's going to be involved. I think it's going to be a group effort. I love what he said in the presser the other day. I think he's one that's going to be open to hearing suggestions, and he knows he's got a lot of great coaches on his staff that I think he's going to be open to hearing some of the input and them coming together as a team defensive staff, as opposed to like, this is my way, I'm doing it my way, this is how I want to do it. And obviously he and Coach Dvorak have a great relationship. It was those two guys basically coaching in the bowl game because it was there is other defensive, there was other guys that were there, but they just didn't know as much. They hadn't been embedded. They helped where they could, but it was basically Rob Dvorak and John Butler running that show. So I think they got really close and really were able to develop, some trust and chemistry there. And so, there's enough of guys coming back, but then also you mix in some new ideas and opinions, and I'm sure there's a lot of it, but I think Coach Butler will be really good about navigating what works, what doesn't work, because I think and I've heard players is just how brilliant he is and how he understands the game and what personnel works. And I think he's got some ideas for some of the guys that maybe can play multiple places on the defense. And so, I think there's a lot of guys on the sideline. I think I'm really excited to be able to hear from.
All right, I'm going to get you out of here on this because having worked with you for so long now, your preparation is incredible, whether it's game notes or potential storylines or what you may want to feature, to having 18 batteries extra. Like, how nervous are you, be honest, for how fluid the 26th could be?
Oh, well, luckily I'm not as structured. Luckily I can roll with it. I think it's going to be a little bit, fly by the seat of our pants. We'll make it work. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I know that a lot of people are disappointed about the spring game, but I've been one where throughout the course of the years when I was at Oklahoma, they didn't have enough players to really have an actual game because they didn't have the roster size. And so it was always done a little bit differently there too. But you don't always see much, and there's not really tackling on the quarterback, and a lot of the older guys don't play much. You're not going to see much of the plays and what it's actually going to be. It's very vanilla. So I'm excited about the mix up. I think we're going to see some fun. These guys are competitive. So they're going to compete on the 7-on-7s, the 1-on-1s. There's a lot of fun events that are going to happen along the way for the whole team score. It's going to be a fun day. And so I'm actually excited about the change up. We're going to with it. We'll see what we can do. It might be a little chaotic, but we'll make the most of it. I think it's going to be fun. We're going to be able to talk to a lot of different guys and get involved in the broadcast. Apparently, you're.
Yeah, I can't wait to be told what to do. That's going to be awesome.
Hey, you're pretty good at that. Once we get there, you follow directions pretty well. I mean, it can be complicated getting to the point of getting on the air, but once you're on the air, you're pretty good at following instructions.
Wow.
But I think it's going to be fun. And if you play in that, in the alumni or whatever, the Hall of Fame All-Stars game, which I'm very intrigued to see if you got anything left in you, the guy that we are hoping to step in to replace you doing the color analysis for that, I think we're going to be all really excited to hear from.
Oh, I can't stand you.
Jess, appreciate the time. I appreciate the letting DB catch some strays over there. And I'm excited to watch your Thunder in the NBA playoffs. We'll talk again soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, guys.